I was never the type of person who expected too much from life. I grew up understanding my place, the corner of the table, the end of the couch, the silence between conversations. I was always the older sister, but I was never the favorite. Since I was little, I noticed there was something wrong. Not with me, but with how my family saw me. I was the child of a mistake, the one who came from my mother's unresolved relationship, while my sister, Mariana, was born from the marriage that worked out. I was the living reminder of what she wanted to forget. But I never let myself get down. I started working early, studied with a scholarship, paid every penny of my college tuition, and built an independent life. It wasn't a luxurious life, but it was dignified, and I was proud of it. But for my family, that was never enough. When Mariana announced her engagement, I knew I'd be pushed aside. They treated her like a princess, and she knew it. She took advantage. She used me as a confidant, a counselor, even as a driver when she needed one. And I, foolishly, accepted. I made sure to help her with everything, choosing the dress, the guest list, the buffet tasting. I spent time and energy as if the wedding were my own. And you know what? For a moment, I felt like I belonged. I felt accepted. But it didn't last. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received a message in the family group. I thought it was just another schedule reminder, but no, it was a formal, cold announcement. After rethinking the final guest list due to space constraints, unfortunately, some dear people will have to watch the ceremony via live stream. We count on your understanding. And my name was among them. I read that about 10 times. I thought it was a joke, that it was temporary, that it was a mistake. But confirmation came from my mother via private message. Daughter, the event venue is smaller than we thought. The priority is the groom's relatives. Don't take it personally, okay? You understand. Understand? I was uninvited. By my own family. From my own sister's wedding. And they suggested I watch it live. But what they didn't know was that this would be the worst decision they could have ever made. The day I received the news of the uninvitation, the world seemed to fall apart. I spent the entire morning staring at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. I wanted to hear an, "I'm sorry, we messed up," or something that showed there was still some remnant of affection. But nothing. Just silence. I decided I wouldn't watch the live stream. Being just an invisible spectator at a moment that should have been important to me, it was too cruel. I needed to be there, even if they treated me like a stranger. Because, deep down, I knew that wedding wasn't just about them. It was about me too. The day before the wedding, I got dressed as if I were going to the party. I chose a dress that made me feel beautiful, even if I was going to be far from the altar, distant from the tables and the approving smiles. Not that I wanted their approval, but I wanted to prove to myself that I deserved to be there. I arrived near the event venue and realized the party looked beautiful. Lights, flowers, smiles, everything organized down to the smallest detail. The ceremony would take place in the garden, a perfect setting for a fairy tale wedding. But I wasn't in the garden. I was outside, hidden behind a tree, watching live on my phone screen, as I saw the people who should love me enter one by one. I saw my sister pass by, dazzling. The white dress, the perfect smile, the loving gaze. I felt a mix of anger and sadness that cut me inside. She didn't know what I felt, nor did I know how to express that pain. As the ceremony progressed, an idea began to form in my head. I wasn't going to disappear that day. I wouldn't be a mere spectator of my own exclusion. I was going to make them see me, even if they didn't want to. That's when I received an anonymous message on my phone. "If you want to talk, we're here." I didn't recognize the number, but a spark of hope ignited. Maybe there was still someone who cared about me, someone willing to listen. But I knew that, to my family, I was already invisible. So, I decided it was time to write my own story. That night, I spent hours staring at my phone screen, trying to figure out who could have sent me that mysterious message. It was someone who knew my situation, someone who perhaps wanted to help me get back what I had lost. Or, who knows, someone who simply felt sorry for me. I decided to reply. "Who are you?" The answer came quickly. someone who knows the truth. My curiosity grew, and a mix of fear and hope took over me. The next day, we arranged to meet at a discreet cafe, far from my family's eyes. I arrived nervous, wondering if it was all a trap, but something inside me told me to trust. When I walked in, I saw a woman in her 40s, with firm eyes and a serious expression. She introduced herself as Anna, a longtime friend of my mother, but who had distanced herself from the family precisely because she disagreed with the way I was treated. Anna told me that behind the scenes of that perfect party, there was much more than I could imagine. That my mother and sister had secrets that could change everything. "You don't know what's really happening, and that's why you're being excluded," Anna said firmly. "They're afraid of what you might discover." My heart pounded. What secrets? Why were they so afraid of me? Anna handed me an envelope with documents and photos that proved an unexpected link between my father and Mariana's fiancé, a story of dirty business and betrayals. I, who had always felt rejected, was about to understand the real reason for that brutal exclusion. And at that moment, I decided that I would no longer be the silent victim. Upon opening the envelope, I felt the weight of the truth crash down on me like a tsunami. There was proof I never imagined: fake contracts, conversations between my father and Mariana's fiancé, and even messages revealing a plan to distance me from the family, so no one would discover their true nature. My head spun. For years, I lived believing that my exclusion was just the result of resentment or envy, but the reality was much darker. My family didn't distance me because I was the wrong daughter, but because I represented a threat. With this information, I understood that my sister and mother were involved in a scheme to ensure the wedding happened without my interference, and they would stop at nothing to keep everything hidden, even if it meant leaving me out. I decided I needed to act, but in a way that couldn't be ignored or suppressed. If they wanted to exclude me, I would make sure to be the center of attention, not in a destructive way, but in a revealing one. That same day, I started gathering evidence, messages, and records. Every detail would serve to show the truth when the time was right. The wedding was scheduled for the next day, and I wasn't going to watch the ceremony hidden behind a screen. I was going to confront my family, but not in the traditional way. My idea? To enter the wedding in a way they would never expect. On the wedding day, I woke up with a mix of anxiety and determination I'd never felt before. I dressed carefully, choosing a dress that, though simple, conveyed exactly the message I wanted to send. I was there, ready to be seen, to be heard. While getting ready, I sent an anonymous message to Mariana's fiancé, a kind of veiled warning. I couldn't let him continue to be manipulated by the lies I'd discovered. I wanted to plant a seed of doubt, a warning that could turn into a hurricane, in the middle of that party. I arrived at the ceremony venue with my heart pounding. I passed through security with a confident smile, pretending to be a surprise guest. And as I entered, I felt the cutting glances that once ignored me, now piercing me. My sister saw me first. Her eyes widened, a mix of surprise and fear. Her mother tried to pull my arm to lead me out, but I firmly pulled away. "You can't kick me out of my own blood," I said, my voice firm and full of emotion. "You tried to erase me from history, but the truth is here," and I showed the envelope, the symbol of my fight. The hall fell silent. Mariana's fiancé looked at me with an expression that mixed confusion and concern. What did I expect? For him to act? For my family to crumble right there? I didn't need immediate answers. My goal was to plant a seed of doubt, expose the lies, and make it clear that I would no longer be invisible. The ceremony was interrupted by a growing murmur. My phone began to vibrate with messages I didn't expect. Support. Messages from people who knew my story and the injustice I was living. At that moment, I felt something was changing. I wasn't alone. That morning seemed ordinary, but I knew nothing would be the same after what I planned to do. As I entered the reception hall, I felt all eyes turn to me, some in astonishment, others in disapproval, and a few barely concealing curiosity. My heart pounded, a mix of fear and adrenaline, but there I was, with the envelope in hand, ready to end years of lies and silence. My sister, always so confident, stared at me with wide eyes, trying to understand how I dared to show up that day. My mother tried to remain composed, with a fake smile and eyes that betrayed her inner tension. The groom looked lost, clearly uncomfortable with my unexpected presence. When the master of ceremonies announced the start of the ceremony, I couldn't wait any longer. I stood up and walked to the center of the room, where everyone could see and hear me. I opened the envelope and with a firm voice began to read the documents that exposed the lies, the plans, and the exclusion they had orchestrated against me. Each word carried weight. Each revelation spread a chilling silence through the hall. Some people started to shift, others whispered among themselves. I knew those truths were hard to accept, but they needed to be heard. I saw a mix of shock and confusion on the groom's face. He didn't know anything, at least not everything. My mother tried to interrupt, asking me to stop, but I paid no attention. Those truths were my liberation. My sister, not knowing what to say, lowered her head and left the room. The ceremony, which should have been a celebration of unity, transformed into a moment of rupture, but also of transformation. I was no longer there to be the invisible sister, the rejected one. I was there to be seen, to show who I truly am. And while everything unfolded, the live stream captured every detail, spreading that story far beyond those walls. After the impact of that revelation in the hall, the atmosphere became heavy with silence, as if time had stopped for a moment. The tension was palpable. Gazes shifted, whispers filled the corners, and I stood firm, breathing deeply to keep from giving in to the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. My mother, still stunned, tried to regain control of the situation, but her words sounded empty in the face of what had just been exposed. My sister, having disappeared from the room, left a void that seemed to increase the weight of the truth in the air. The groom, who until then seemed to be in a state of denial, began to ask questions, seeking to understand what had truly happened. Meanwhile, I felt a confusing mix of relief and sadness. It was relief to finally get everything off my chest, but sadness to know that this confrontation meant the end of an important chapter, perhaps of the family I so desperately wanted to preserve. In the days that followed, social media exploded, with comments about what happened at the ceremony. My video went viral, reaching thousands of people who identified with my story. I received messages of support, virtual hugs, and testimonials that gave me the strength to keep fighting, even if I was alone. The exposure brought inevitable consequences. My family avoided me, and their silence hurt more than any harsh words I had ever heard. But at the same time, I began to realize that this isolation gave me an opportunity to rediscover myself, to rebuild myself away from the shadows that suffocated me. It was during this period that I decided I could no longer live waiting for a reconciliation that might never come. I needed to find my own happiness, build a future where I was the protagonist, not a supporting character in their story. With the weight of the family's silence, I sought refuge in the people who supported me, true friends, colleagues, and the community I was building online. It was incredible to realize that, even far from my own, I wasn't alone. Every message of kindness and every story shared with me reinforced the importance of fighting for self-respect and self-love. I created videos talking about rejection, overcoming adversity, and self-esteem, and every positive reaction was fuel to keep going. But not everything was easy. I had sleepless nights, deep doubts, moments when longing squeezed my heart and the feeling of abandonment consumed me. The pain of seeing my family go on with their lives as if I were invisible was an almost unbearable burden. It was precisely in this whirlwind that I found a strength I didn't even know I possessed. I started investing in myself, courses, hobbies, mental health, everything to rebuild the woman I wanted to be. Meanwhile, amidst this transformation, I noticed something unexpected. My story was inspiring other people to face their own ghosts. That painful episode I thought was the end, in reality, became a beginning for many lives, including my own. Months after that episode that turned my life upside down, my mother reached out to me. It wasn't easy to accept the invitation to talk, but I did, because I knew I needed to close that chapter, at least for myself. At the meeting, in a simple cafe, the words came out slowly. She talked about her fears, about the pressure she felt to maintain appearances, and about the guilt she carried for everything that happened. I shared my pains, my expectations, and how betrayed and abandoned I felt. It was a moment of catharsis, full of tears, silences, and some nervous laughter. It wasn't magic. It didn't erase everything, but it opened a door for the dialogue I had never had before. I realized that, behind the distance and pride, there was love, even if wounded. And that, to rebuild any relationship, it required courage and willingness to understand the other person. This meeting didn't erase the scars, but it was the beginning of a healing process, slow and full of challenges. I was ready to move forward, but with a new perspective, more mature, stronger, more aware of what I deserve.